Srinivas garu, please, I can start.
Namaste everyone. Welcome to our series of talks on psychic being. This is one of the important topics of sadhana across all margas. In Sri Aurobindo's terminology, what we refer to as psychic being is what in other paths we refer to as antaratma, the soul. There are some minor variations, but broadly you get the idea. At our present state of consciousness, we can equate these terms and start working towards establishing contact with the psychic being. As we progress, we may get into more nuances, and these nuances are described in the book that we are studying, The Emergence of Psychic Being by A.S.Dalal. Today, we take up the first chapter of this book, and the title of this chapter is Psychic Being, Its Nature and Function. There are a total of, in addition to the introduction, there are 6 other chapters in this book. This is the first chapter that discusses the basics of what is psychic being. The next chapter would be the action and influence of psychic being. Then the establishing of contact with psychic being. Then the growth of psychic being. How does it come forward? How does it take charge of our life? Then there is the emergence of psychic being, which is the full flowering of psychic being. So in a way, in this booklet, I won't say booklet, but certainly in this small book, Psychic Being and Its Emergence by A.S.Dalal, we get an idea. We all hear about the soul. We have always heard about the soul. But in the path of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, they have described step by step, how does one go and reach out to the soul within, and how does one help the soul gradually come forward and take control of the life. We discuss various difficulties in the process. And how do we work on these difficulties? Now, one of the areas of difficulties is understanding, first of all, our own personality. In fact, the mother herself says that one of the greatest help that Sri Aurobindo has done for spiritual seekers across all geographies and across all paths is he has explained the constitution of the human being very vividly and clearly. And this allows the seeker to understand himself. So for all of us who are beginning our spiritual journey or who are in the process of trying to deepen our spiritual journey, the first step would be to understand the nuances of our own being. In Sri Aurobindo's terminology, at the very, very high level, he describes the physical being, which is our body. He describes our emotional and pranic being. He calls it the vital being. The vital being, that was the terminology used at that time. So it refers to a composite aspect of our personality of energies and emotions. So that's the vital being. And then the mental being, the mind, the thoughts, the intellect, the discriminative capacity, all of these. So these 3 are important to understand. And then behind them stands the psychic being, which is our soul. So first we need to understand this. And then, of course, as we grow more granular, as as we need to, we will get into other terminology associated with it, but we need to understand that there are these 4 parts of the being. Because in today's talk, we will be going through these 3 parts, the physical, vital, mental, and particularly the mental and vital in a good amount of detail. So we need to understand them, and we need to see how they help or hinder the soul in its coming forward. So we will take that up and we will move forward. One of the important things to understand for us is how crucial and how critical the soul is, the psychic being is. Sri Aurobindo and Mother go on to say that it is only on earth that the psychic principle is established. And Mother clarifies, not the universe, only on earth. This principle of seeking a spiritual unfolding and an evolutionary flowering and growing in consciousness, which is essentially the psychic principle, the Mother says it exists only upon earth. And upon earth, naturally, it applies to humans. It is us humans. We are blessed. In fact, it is the central principle of psychic being is spiritual aspiration. And having that spiritual aspiration, being born upon earth, we are truly blessed. And of course, Mother goes on to add that humans generally do not even recognize this principle. They are not even aware of it. Or even if they are aware of it, they don't take it seriously enough. They don't consider it as one of the biggest gifts in this whole universe. Because we are lost in our outer sensory, emotional, thought-dominated world that we rarely get an opportunity to examine and go deeper. Mother further elaborates that even people, when they approach gods, beings of higher planes, such as angels, other beings such as gods, none of them have this psychic principle in them. And we discussed it earlier as well, that to make progress, even gods come down upon earth to go through this evolutionary principle. The gods may have greater capacities than us in one particular dimension, but the psychic principle exists only upon earth, and that is the journey one has to go through to evolve. The beings of vital world do not have the psychic principle. And Mother goes on to add humorously that perhaps they do not even want it. And here, it's a very important insight. Why do beings of vital worlds do not want a psychic being? Because fundamentally, what psychic being does is it keeps on prodding us to explore the right as opposed to the wrong, to give up the wrong in preference to the right, to develop positive attributes such as generosity, harmony, in a way, self-giving. But all of these are opposed to the vital principle of accumulation and domination. And we have to reflect to what extent do we want the psychic principle? Because in a way, we don't have to make it very complex, At a very simple level, the psychic principle is what tells us the right from the wrong. In a way, it is our conscience at a very first step level. It's a very kindergarten level. The psychic principle is nothing but our own conscience. And how many of us listen to the conscience? How many of us humans live by this conscience? This is what Mother points out when she says that beings of vital worlds do not want the psychic principle. And of course, she says the humans, even though we have it, we don't take adequate advantage of it. We don't take proper care to let it flower inside of us, to strengthen that light inside of us. The humans, the Mother says, from the very moment of birth, in a physical body, there is in the being, in its depths, the psychic presence which pushes the whole being towards the fulfillment, towards the discovery of one's divine self. From the very birth, this psychic principle is active, that is asking us to go closer and closer to our purest being, to our perfect being. In Savitri, there are a few lines I will read so that we get the gist of what is the psychic principle. This bodily appearance is not all. This bodily appearance is not all. The form deceives. The person is a mask. Hid deep in man, celestial powers can dwell. Celestial powers, in other words, heavenly powers, they can dwell. Hid deep in man, celestial powers can dwell. His fragile ship conveys through the sea of years. This fragile ship conveys through the sea of years. An incognito of the imperishable. This is a beautiful phrase. An incognito. Incognito is something you cannot recognize. What is it that you cannot recognize? Of the imperishable, something that does not perish, something that is godlike. A spirit that is a flame of God abides. A spirit that is a flame of God abides. A fiery portion of the wonderful, artist of his own beauty and delight, immortal in our mortal poverty. Immortal in our mortal poverty. A person persistent through the lapse of worlds, although the same forever in many shapes. Although the same forever in many shapes. We change the bodies, our essence is the same. By the outward mind unrecognizable, assuming names unknown in unknown climes, imprints through time upon earth's worn page, a growing figure of its secret self. A growing figure, it is not static. It is a growing figure of its secret self, and learns by experience what the spirit knew, till it can see its truth alive and God. So there is divine powers inside of us. They remain the same even when we change the bodies. That remains the same even when we change the bodies, this divine principle. And it grows through experiences. And it keeps growing till it realizes God. This is, in a way, it captures many aspects of the psychic being, many aspects of the psychic journey, in a way, the psychic principle. This is an exceptional quality that exists only in humans and only upon earth. However, we don't recognize it. We don't know where it is. At the beginning, the psychic being is entirely veiled part of us. Veiled means screened. It is covered. The veil is thick. You know the covering we wear in front of this face? The veil is thick, and we know not the secret light within us. A secluded king in a screened chamber. A secluded king in a screened chamber. Look at this phrase. He is the king. He is supposed to rule over his whole universe, his whole world. But secluded. He's in a screened chamber. Nobody can see him. Nobody can hear him. Psychic being is the spark of the divine fire that grows behind the mind, the vital, and the physical. Now we get to know what are these screens. The screens are the mind, the vital, and the physical. The three parts we spoke about earlier. It is a divine fire that grows behind the mind, vital, and physical. And it is by means of the psychic being that the prakriti of ignorance is transformed into prakriti of knowledge. So this is how we grow, and the physical, vital, and mental in their current condition are prakriti of ignorance. We will see why. We'll go into a far more detail. The prakriti of ignorance, because the mind prefers its own ideas, the vital prefers its own desires. The physical being is soaked in tamas. You know, in my childhood, and probably many of you may still remember these days, we used to have lanterns. We used to put kerosene in the lantern. There would be a little wick that comes out. You light that wick, and then you put a little glass cover back. Some of you may remember it. These were lanterns, hurricane lantern they used to call it, or in the home also we used to use these lanterns. They were the source of light. And what would happen, every now and then, the glass would get covered by a dark soot inside. So you would take that glass, cylindrical hollow glass out, and you would wipe it with a piece of cloth and you put it back, because it's only when you remove that black covering that you can see the light radiate out. This is what the physical, vital, and mental do to us. The light is inside, but the outer layering of physical, vital, mental is full of this soot. What is this soot? Now we will see. Let us take the mind first. The psychic, the soul, tries to give us guidance, but what happens? First, the mind does not detect the source of this guidance. Second, it takes this guidance as its own activity, because what is the mind always doing? It is thinking, 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 thinking. Every 2 seconds, there is a new thought. So even when a message comes, the mind, first of all, the mental substance changes this subtle intimation of the divine into its own thoughts. And these thoughts follow certain predetermined patterns. All of us have very specific mold in which we think. Immediately, this deeper intimation is forced into this mold, and it becomes diluted in the process. The logic, the argumentation, the justification. In Synthesis of Yoga, Sri Aurobindo describes not just the mind, he gives layers and layers of the mind. He gives sense mind. The minute there is a sensory input, the mind takes on its own journey. I like it, I don't like it, I'm indifferent to it. Then there is the desire mind. The minute there is a desire, the mind gets into a justification mode of why that desire should be fulfilled. Then there is, of course, the thought mind, in which we are soaked day in and day out. We are like this helpless, inefficient, incompetent swimmer that is thrown into a river that is in full flood. We are choking, we are not able to think clearly, and we are floating. We are going sometimes into the thoughts. Sometimes that is how our state is. The sense mind, the desire mind, the thought mind, we are submerged in the mind. And then there is the ego. If the mind obeys the urge of the vital ego, there is a little chance for the psychic, for the guidance. We know the right from the wrong, but submerged in the mind, we don't take the right decision. I mean, take, for example, our Puranas. We talk about Ravanasura. Didn't Ravana know that stealing somebody else's wife was wrong? But the desire, the vital ego, There is also a cute episode, a very interesting episode in Mahabharata, where once Sri Krishna goes to Duryodhan and he tells Duryodhan, he said, they were also cousins, just as Sri Krishna was cousin of Pandavas, he was also a cousin of Duryodhan. He says, Duryodhan, why are you doing this? You know that what you are doing is adharma. And you have your uncle who is constantly pulling you on the other side. You are going to cause the destruction of your entire family. Please stop all this nonsense. Give them what they deserve and move on from there. Then Duryodhan is supposed to give a beautiful answer back. He says, Janami dharmam, nachame pravritti, janami adharmam, nachame nivrutti. I know what dharma is, but that is not my nature, my dear. I know what adharma is, but my nature cannot stop itself from growing in that direction. See, even a character like Duryodhan also, who is portrayed as very strong and egoistic, he is admitting, I know what is right, I know what is wrong, but I can't do what is right, I can't stop doing what is wrong. We have to reflect in our own decisions, our own journey, our own choices. Where are we behaving in the right way and the wrong way? Take a look at the world around us. Do you think all these scams that happen are happening by accident? Of course not. They are engineered. The person who is doing knows they are done very cleverly. Whether you take the 2008 GFC, the great financial crisis, whether you take the Ukraine war, which is happening, do you think people don't know what is right and wrong? Of course they do. In spite of having abundant food supplies for the entire world, we have 350 million people starving today. These are choices we make, not accidents. So anyway, the point is our mind has certain vasanas, certain patterns. We need to recognize what is the pattern of thinking, observe it closely. After 35, most people have a very standard pattern of action and reaction. They don't change much. A normal person I'm talking about. You can predict a reaction to a particular impulse. You give a certain input, you get a certain output. That is human nature for me. Aside from the obvious problems, there is also subtler problems with mind. Let us say we are meditating. And during the meditation, a certain experience happens. What happens to us? Instantly, we start analyzing that experience. Instantly, we start monitoring that experience, understanding that experience. And in that very process, we dilute or redirect that experience. That is the subtler level problem we have. We should learn how to observe our mind. Since some of you have specifically said meditation as a part of these sessions, we will try to do that at the end today, and we'll try to take this up at that point in time of how to build more strong awareness as opposed to flowing with the thoughts. So this is the mind. Then we go into the vital. Sri Aurobindo says that we actually have a double soul. We have a superficial desire soul, and then we have a true psychic entity. A double soul. A desire soul that is right at the very front, and we have a true psychic entity. What is the nature of the desire soul? It feels the touches of outward things, surface nature, actions and reactions, but it doesn't go deeper, a deeper experience. The desire soul and emotions are governed by egoistic passion. And then Sri Aurobindo goes on to give a very detailed description of all the vital problems. I will read some of them. Impulses with their imperfections, perversions, sordid degradations, a heart that is given over to lust, desires, wrath. Wrath is anger, intense or fierce demand, debased by its slavery to any and every impulse. Any and every impulse. We are like an unbalanced flower vase on a table, a little gust of wind, a little shake of the table, we are ready to fall and crack. Fragile. Our egos are so fragile. We go into a meeting, if somebody doesn't look at us instantly, we get irritated. On a conference call, somebody in the middle of other things doesn't give due regard to our opinion, we get irritated. So fragile, so insecure. We go to a social function, marriages, for example, and if a particular person doesn't greet us, we get affected. Or they make an unnecessary small comment, we get affected. We carry that back for days. We seem to be very, very fragile, very insecure, very no confidence at all about who we are. This is the nature of our vital. The desire soul returns the triple response of pleasure, pain, and indifference. But the psychic being behind it has equal delight of all its experiences. It compels the desire soul to more and more experience and to change its values. So the psychic being, when it is trying to work with the desire soul, it tries to change it. We will work more on that also. But right now we are seeing how the vital and the mental are covering the psychic. All this suit, all these disturbances. We don't go to the essence of things. You know, on this particular thing about pleasure, pain, indifference, somebody asked Sri Aurobindo. They said, sir, how does a rishi like you experience the joy of things? Do you have the same taste when you eat a rasagulla or when you bite a chili? Because you said dvandvatita, you know, like and dislike, you are beyond all that, no? That is what a rishi is supposed to be. So do the rasagulla and the chilies taste the same? Sri Aurobindo writes in his response that a rishi does not experience a rasagulla and chili the same way. Their distinct tastes are very much experienced by the rishi, but he has an equanimity of rasa of both the experiences. The vital elation or the irritation doesn't come out for a rishi. He experiences the rasa with equanimity. This is the difference. So somewhere all these vital aberrations, the vasanas, the emotions, the insecurities, the dualities, all of these have to be calmed down if the light of the psychic has to come into our outer nature. And the physical, with obstinate inertia, crass fidelity to old habit, the physical doesn't change. And as we grow, the physical needs to become more supple. We need to grow in our physical consciousness. It's an advanced subject, actually speaking, even though it's the most obvious thing. The body is the easiest to identify. It is actually an advanced subject to go into physical consciousness and its transformation. I mean, simple thing to understand how rigid your body is. Try to change the posture in which you sleep and see how many days it takes to adjust. And then imagine changing other things. The physical is dark and the psychic is trying to give its light to the physical. There should be ananda in the cells. And mother in agenda, when she is working with the cells, she says the cells have disbelief. They don't believe in immortality. They don't believe in divine light. Anyway, that's a whole separate subject. This is why we call it Prakriti of ignorance, the term that we saw earlier, that psychic being tries to change the nature from Prakriti of ignorance to Prakriti of knowledge. So this is what we are dealing with. In this chapter, what I'm going to do is, it's actually the longest chapter of the whole book, even though it is an introductory chapter. We will take at our own pace. We will not try to rush to complete it today and skip over things. And also the second chapter is fairly small, so we can kind of make up the pace as we go along. So what is important is we understand the basics properly. Sri Aurobindo somewhere says, integral yoga, Purna yoga, uses the method of Vedanta with the aim of the Tantra. The method of Vedanta, Viveka, Vichara, Vairagya, all of that inwardly, with the aim of Tantra. The aim of Tantra being seeking divine delight in our physical existence and terrestrial existence without rejecting the world. So when you talk of Vedanta, there is a very important example that Vedanta gives, which is relevant to the discussion we are having. There is a theme in Vedanta. I bring it for two reasons. If there are among us students of Vedanta, they will be able to relate to Sri Aurobindo's approach very clearly. And two, if some of you are not students of Vedanta and you haven't heard these terms, this will introduce to some of these basic concepts of Vedanta, which are useful for all spiritual seekers. There is the principle of superimposition in Vedanta. We superimpose Maya on Brahman. That is one of the basic concepts. We superimpose ignorance over reality. We mistake the reality around us for what you see around us for reality when it is actually not. This theme is so important that many acharyas have written about it, including Adi Shankaracharya, right in the very beginning of Brahma Sutras, which is considered to be one of the most advanced texts. Adhyasa Bhashya is written right in the beginning of it. And then people have written commentaries on Shankaracharya's writing on Adhyasa Bhashya. So it's a very important theme. The classic example, some of you know, is that there is you look at what is actually a rope and you think it is a snake. This is one of the classic examples of Adhyasa. Now, what is happening at that moment when you try to reach for a rope and you think it is a snake, or when you walk in a place where there is a rope and you think for a moment you stepped on a snake? What happens? What happens in our being? There is a momentary sharp reaction, a response. So the result of superimposition is not just, okay, I've superimposed and it's okay, I'm not going to follow that, I'll remove the superimposition. The superimposition causes a reaction. It makes us live in a particular way. It makes us react in a particular way. It creates a belief system in the longer term in a particular way. It creates a moral social matrix of a particular way because we believe in that particular superimposition. It makes us finally lead our life in a particular way if we are not careful enough to step out of it. In addition to the snake and rope, there are a couple of other examples given. Let us say you have a small crystal ball. You keep it on a table and you keep a yellow flower behind it. What is the color of the crystal ball? You suddenly see it as a yellow crystal ball. You keep a hibiscus red flower. It is a red crystal ball. These are some of the examples given how we have this superimposition tendency. But the key part is the tendency in life is that we react. We frame our life. We speak. We build our whole journey based on the superimposition. So what is the superimposition I'm talking about now? Why is it so important? The first superimposition is, the truth is I am the soul, but I believe I am the body. The truth is I live my entire life with the belief that I am the body. I have a certain responsibility. I have certain functions. I have certain dependents. I have certain assets. I have certain liabilities. I have certain possessions. All of our world, we are building around this basic thing, which is I am the body belief. Whereas the truth is, I am not the body, I am the soul. Superimposition. Next superimposition. I am the emotions. This is my emotion. I got so hurt when somebody behaved like that. I was so angry when somebody insulted me. And then in that anger, I have a day, 2 days, 3 days. If it's a very bad argument, sometimes long time. All of that caught in that web. If I had said that, if that person had not done that, this whole flux, I am going through it. Whereas the truth is, I am the soul. None of this is me. Same thing with the mind. As an extension, you can relate. You are all well-read people. Thoughts. This is my idea. He didn't give it. This is not logical. It is so stupid. They don't listen to me. These are journeys that we go through for decades without questioning the reality. We have done a superimposition which we don't even bother to question. And we think that is the rational way of living. Going further, what is the reality? I am the psychic being. What is the superimposed reality? I will tell you. If I am the psychic being, the reality is I am the consciousness. I am the consciousness that awakens in matter, that lights up matter. Belief system, I am this body. Psychic being reality, I am the eternal spirit. Superimposed reality, I am the body, I die when the body dies. Psychic being reality, I am infinite. Superimposed reality, I am finite, I am body, I suffer, I am emotions, I suffer, I am happy, I am unhappy, I am delighted, I am irritated. Superimposed reality. I am Ananda. I am eternally joyful, the psychic reality. This is what we say, right? Atma is Sat Chit Ananda. Existence, consciousness, bliss. Please understand a minor, subtle difference here. Eternal truth says we are Sat Chit Ananda. Our essential property is Ananda, not a superimposed property. I don't become happy. I am happiness. This is a very subtle but important difference, a little bit advanced. But our very fundamental nature is happiness. That is what Sanatana Dharma is telling us. There is a bliss, Satchidananda. I am a silent witness. That is the truth of psychic being. The superimposed reality is I think non-stop. I am bouncing around emotions. I bounce around duality. All of this. So we have superimposed the mind and body and emotions on a soul, on a psychic being, which is beyond all of this. Unless I learn to separate, I cannot make progress. So this superimposition has to be separated. In a way, if you are familiar, this is also something like separating the Purusha from Prakriti. We can try to work on this. In Synthesis of Yoga, for example, there are 3-4 very beautiful chapters. If you are fond of reading, you can read these chapters. Release from subjection to body. It's a very small chapter, but it's one of the most powerful chapters for us. Hardly 8 pages, 7 pages, something like that. Release from subjection to heart and mind. Release from subjection to ego. These chapters are a must read for any serious seeker of any path. These are very beautiful chapters from Synthesis of Yoga, Yoga of Knowledge, the Jnana Yoga section. I can share these with you in the chat box also. But basically, you open Synthesis and you will be able to find them. Redeeming feature to all of this, even though we are submerged in the mind and the vital and the body and all of these things, and what Sri Aurobindo used, a very powerful phrase. He says, we are debased by slavery. Debased means we are lowered. We fall down into an ugly matter, dirty matter. That is debasing. How do we fall? By engaging with every impulse, by getting into all these self-gratification and pleasures and reactions and all of these things. We lower our consciousness. Even though we do all that, the psychic being itself is an ever pure flame. It is a flame that burns brightly. The psychic is not tarnished by imperfections and impurities, defects and deprivations of the surface being. It is an ever pure flame of the divinity in things. Nothing that comes to it, nothing that enters into our experience can pollute its purity or extinguish the flame. This spiritual stuff is immaculate, luminous. The divine flame is untarnished. It doesn't get extinguished by our behavior. Though I must tell you, and we'll get to that in a bit, sometimes there is a psychic sadness. It feels sad, but it doesn't get extinguished. In Bhagavad Gita, there is a shloka, Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka. Describing the soul, Sri Krishna says, weapons cannot destroy your soul. The Agni cannot burn. Even other aspects do not affect the soul. It is ever pure. Something like that. But having said that, because there is an assurance that the psychic being is ever pure, willful indulgence is not mandated for a spiritual seeker. Karma is karma, psychic is psychic. Please remember that. Just because the psychic is not extinguished doesn't mean we can have, whatever we want or do whatever we want. There is also another way to look at it. Recently, I was having a conversation with another gentleman who also is a fairly sincere and serious spiritual seeker. He left his well-to-do tech job at age of 35, and he has devoted his entire life to the service of a particular religious institution. We were having a discussion, and what came out is that when you see people and individuals with a very strong spiritual bent of mind and very strong spiritual strength who are leading life in a particular way, in a way that actually arouses your own admiration, do not judge them by their mental and vital behaviors. They may not be as intelligent as you. They may have more mental limitations than you. They may have emotional outbursts. But try to recognize people by their soul capacities rather than the vital and mental, and associate with people with strong soul capacities. This is a very important spiritual hint in terms of our journey in life. Because we have all karmic entanglements. Those we come close to in this life may continue with us in future, and these kind of things. If we are lucky enough to find people with good soul strength, with solid spiritual content, one has to learn to ignore the vital and mental combinations of these people so that we don't get distracted by them and lose their friendship or lose their intimacy. We should be able to realize that the mind may not be as evolved, but this person is 24 karat gold, and I will try to engage with him. This is just a side comment, but also an important one in the journey of our life. So, the key to our progress in terms of physical and vital and mental is purification. The psychic being, Mother says, its action is like a searchlight showing up all that has to be changed in the nature. It has in it a flame of will insistent on perfection, on an alchemic transmutation of all inner and outer existence. There are many things here. We'll take up a few aspects. The psychic being is like a searchlight. Searchlight is, it's a concentrated beam of light when you put a powerful torch. That's a searchlight. Concentrated beam. That is what a psychic being is like. What does it show? It shows all that is there in our nature that needs to be changed. The physical, the vital, and mental. Suddenly it throws a beam of light. You cannot hide your tendencies. In addition to that, it is making you aware. That is the jnana. It gives you the knowledge of all that has to be changed. In addition to that, it has one more specific property. It has in it a flame of will, insistent on perfection and alchemic transmutation of our existence. It has the Ichha Shakti. The psychic being has Ichha Shakti. It shows us with jnana what is to be changed, but along with it, it also gives us the will to change it. Alchemic transmutation. Alchemy is a science which turns things to gold. So Mother is saying that we have to change our inner and outer nature from its debased condition to gold. And psychic being will help us realize what these things are and give us the willpower to change. It has the capacity to automatically distinguish the right step from the false. The most intimate character of the psychic is its pressure towards the divine. It keeps on prodding us to move towards the divine. This is the inherent property of psychic being. The most intimate character of the psychic is its pressure towards the divine. It keeps pushing us, nudging us. The mind will justify, no, let me, do some more work. Let me invest in one more startup. Let me go into one more business. I have enough wealth to live life comfortably for myself and my children. But yet my vasanas prod me to spend more time on earning rather than devoting myself for swadhyaya. Even though I know that I have reached the age to transition from grihastha to vanaprastha, I don't consider it. Oh, these days the 60s is the new 40s, so therefore I will continue my grihastha ashrama. How mind justifies, Somebody is in trouble, we have enough capacity to help. Oh, I'm not going to waste my time on people. There are many ways in which our vital and mental justify, but there is this constant pressure that the psychic being pushes us towards the divine, and it pushes us through sacred love and joy and oneness, not in terms of differences and fights. The psychic being, it insists on truth, on will and strength and mastery, on love and joy and beauty. This word joy again and again, and we keep coming across this word ananda again and again when we go into spiritual scriptures and any related spiritual material. I'll spend a little time. We just covered the vital being. So I'll just point out something important between what is a vital joy and a psychic joy. What is the secret ananda? You see, the vital joy gives us a high and then inevitably a low, number one. The vital joy is often dependent on external circumstances. Something good happens, something beautiful happens, something outside of us happens. Somebody has given us something to be happy about. A recognition has come my way. A promotion has come my way. A compliment has come my way. Anything that gives that kind of a high is more a vital movement. I will take a very peculiar example. Probably many housewives in particular can relate to it, about psychic joy. I mean, and I'm sure, men also will relate to it. We all are Indians, so we enjoy, particularly South Indians, we enjoy curd and buttermilk quite a lot, particularly curd, There is a particular taste of curd that when you set curd, when it is perfectly set and you taste it, how does it taste? It is not like you're eating a laddu and it's very sweet. It is not that. It is not that you have mixed salt with buttermilk and you're enjoying. It does not have that kind of a taste. It is not sour. It is just right. In Telugu, there is a very peculiar word for it which doesn't exist in other languages. Kammaga undi. The psychic joy, the psychic ananda is not an exuberant joy. It is not a high. It is not something that gives you a certain over-exuberance. In another way to understand this ananda, which we cannot seem to fathom, is look at it in a very different context. Let us say there is somebody who has been ill for close to bedridden and ill for 15 years. Bedridden and ill for 15 years. Not able to get down without help, not able to walk, not able to move forward. There is still a will to live. Why? Somewhere there is a subtle ananda of existence embedded in that very being. Look from outside, you can't understand why does this person want to live. There is this joy, there is the being of existence that is drawing the rasa of existence. The rasa of existence. So please be aware, the psychic joy is very subtle and very different compared to all these joys and pleasures we experience through the vital. In some ways, we are overexposed to the vital and we need to go deeper to understand this subtle joy. It is an inward joy, Mother says, that comes from the perception of divine. On this purification, I will point out some chapters again. In Yoga of Self-Perfection, there is a chapter in Synthesis of Yoga, in the section of Yoga of Self-Perfection, there is a chapter on purification of lower nature, lower instruments. It's a very good chapter that contains several insights on how to work on our own nature. There is a purification of mind. What is a purification of mind? First of all, it learns to calm down. It is not going to get carried away in a lot of these endless thoughts. We will try to see today in our meditation how to move from thoughts to simple awareness, simple existence. Vitally, the vital has to be studied. The duality has to go at some level. At least, if you can't completely outgrow the duality, there has to be a certain forbearance, a capacity to absorb a few shocks without too much reaction. And then the physical has to be sufficiently altered not to bury altogether the inner flame under the mass of its outwardness, obscurity or inertia. So the physical, the vital and mental have to be purified. The mind has to be calm on a regular basis, not when we meditate alone, throughout the day. A certain inwardness, antarmukha samaradhya, says Lalita Sahasranam. Our extroversion has to be converted into a certain introverted nature. We should try to have periods of silence without stimulus, at least a couple of hours in a day, without any stimulus, no phone, no screen, no external stimulus. Try to have those couple of hours in a day so that the being settles down, calms down. I had an interesting conversation with one of the sadhikas of Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry, and she gave an important guidance. She said, to prepare for our inner journey of a serious nature, one should gradually develop a capacity to just sit in the same place for 3 to 4 hours at times. Just be calm, do a little something that you may do it, but generally bring that sthirata. The adhara should have the physical, vital, mental capacity to have stillness. Just be still, do something simple. but yet have the capacity to be there. A general quietening of being is what we need. And this again ties back to the first session we had on inner being. We have to turn the mind inward. We have to get into the deeper layers of the vital and the physical and the capacity to hold ourselves in a particular way. So now, excuse me. I wanted to do a longer meditation session today, but I have a little practical problem. You see, the schools have closed, the summer has come. So we have some very happy psychic beings that are playing outside my house, whose noises you could probably hear throughout this lecture as well. Some of them have a descent of vital being and they shriek that even in my 5th floor, they shatter glass. I mean, that is their capacity. And that makes it slightly unsuitable for a very prolonged meditation. So we'll take up another 5-10 minutes of discussion and we'll do a slightly shorter meditation under the conditions. Last week, we did not have this problem because the exams last month, because the exams were going on, we were all in a space of tranquility and silence. So today we'll continue a little bit further and then do a perhaps slightly shorter meditation. So I referred to one other aspect of the psychic, which is the psychic sadness. Or maybe I'll take up another topic, not the psychic sadness. I'll take up the location of the psychic being. Perhaps that is something that we should do today. We can take up psychic sadness next time. So the psychic being is in the center, is in the heart center, in the middle of the chest. But it is deep behind. It is deep behind. It is in the middle of the chest, but in a deeper location. According to the ancient teaching, the seat of the immanent divine, immanent means that the one who is inside, the immanent divine, the hidden Purusha, is the mystic heart, the secret cave, Hridaye Guhyam, as the Upanishads puts it. In the Mundak Upanishads, for example, in 3.1.7, there are many references in many Upanishads. This is one of them. It is deep within the heart. When one is going away from the vital into the psychic, it is felt as if one is going deep down until one reaches the central place of the psychic. The more one goes, the more intense becomes the psychic happiness. Mother goes on to clarify, it is not in the body. It is within the consciousness in another dimension. This is obvious, but she is pointing it out. It is not located in the physical. My brother-in-law is a spine surgeon. If I ask him, he can't go and see the psychic being when he's doing the next surgery, right? Because these are dimensions of awareness and consciousness. Also, so we know the general location. I want to share with you one interesting anecdote. I've referred to Sri Kapali Shastri, perhaps in earlier lectures as well. He was a very advanced sadhak in the ashram. He was a self-realized soul. And Sri Aurobindo says in one of his letters that there are sadhaks here who, if they go out, they can establish ashrams of their own. And I believe he's one of those caliber persons. One day, somebody noticed a red patch in the area of his chest somewhere here. And they asked him what happened. I mean, they were naturally worried, whether he developed a rash or something. Oh, he casually said, well, I have been concentrating on the psychic for a while, and I think it is the physical reaction to that process. You know, when we take up the sadhana of psychic and it goes on, it can be that strong. But that means a one-pointed, a very serious one-pointed sadhana. Only then will the psychic being result in such physical manifestation of it. As I said, he was a self-realized soul, he was a very advanced sadhana. But the psychic being, as Mother has said, is not in the physical dimension. It is in the dimension of consciousness. And Mother says, the psychic, the power of the psychic is not knowledge, but a spiritual feeling. You know, the power of our mind is knowledge and intellect and all these things. The power of our heart is the emotion. But the power of our psychic is a spiritual feeling, a tender spiritual feeling. It is like a beautiful fragrance that permeates all our being. A person who is in the psychic consciousness spontaneously radiates peace, harmony, generosity, beauty. In fact, another thing I must also share with you, since many of you are familiar with Sri Aurobindo's literature and the sadhana of integral yoga, if you see the description of the characteristics of the psychic being, you find that in the 4 powers, it is Mahalakshmi whose description very, very closely matches the attributes of the psychic being. Wherever she presses her feet, course miraculous streams of an entrancing ananda. You know, the psychic journey is a spontaneous joy. I believe among the 4 powers, it is Mother Mahalakshmi who guides our journey of the emergence of the psychic. Of course, you need the blessings of Mahasaraswati for continuously working on self-perfection. Point to note is, as we talk about the center of the heart, we should know that actually there are 3 centers there. 3 subtle centers. The center of emotions is at this center of the chest as well. But it is more towards the surface area. Then there is the ego. I am very important in life. I am very important in the world. That ego also has a center right there. And deep within is the psychic being. One needs to go deeper and deeper. There are several teachers of meditations today in the path of integral yoga. One of them pointed out that if it's difficult as we go deeper and deeper to break through these layers and reach the psychic being from here, one can also attempt to touch the psychic being from the opposite side, from the back of our being, between the shoulder blades. One can also meditate. It was a very interesting observation, and I believe that there are those who have benefited from that tip. We will take up psychic meditations also, meditations on the psychic beings in the future classes. So that is where we will stop. We will take up some other descriptions of the psychic being and the psychic sadness and some of these things in the subsequent class. We have covered about 60% of what has been touched upon in the book in this particular chapter. I have rearranged some of the sequence and flow so that I could walk you through more gradually, because in the book they had to take an entire passage of the mother and they couldn't break up. I was able to take that passage and rearrange it so that the introductory part comes in the beginning and the advanced topic comes a little later. I rearranged it, but the material, however, is mostly from the book, 80%, 90%, and then a few other things from other books also I have brought in here so that it helps our progress and all of this. So that is the material that we will cover today. We will take up a little bit of meditation today. What we will do is you will have to bear with the noise. I cannot modify that or change that or shield that. I will also not try to mute and unmute myself through the meditation. Even in silent periods, I will leave it as it is so that your mind can gradually block out and fade away these particular noises that are coming in. I apologize for that. That is something that is beyond my control. Suggest is as we prepare for meditation, so we'll continue the meditation. It's now 8:10. We'll take up the meditation and try to conclude in 15 minutes. We'll try to conclude maybe at 8:25 or maybe 8:30. And then if you're still interested, you can stay and ask questions. I have no time constraint per se. So kindly adjust yourselves. First, if there is any light that is falling on your face directly, either from the computer screen or from the ambient lighting, you can reduce it or turn it away. If you wish to make your room fully dark, that's fine as well. I see questions coming in, and we will definitely take up the questions after the meditation. We will spend the time on it. So, once the ambient setting, the environment has been adjusted, please remember to also put your phone on silent or maybe go into the flight mode if that is something that you wish to do. Then there are, once the environment is set, there are three steps. One is the physical posture. The other is the breathing, and finally the meditation. Physical posture, preferably do not cross your legs if you're sitting in a chair. If you're sitting on a mat or ground, you're welcome to sit in Ardha Padmasana, Padmasana, whatever is suitable for you, or even just a normal squatting. But do not expose your body directly to the floor. Try to have either a towel or a cushion or something. If you can, because this is a short meditation, do not touch your back either to the wall or to the chair also. You can have your hands rest on the thighs with your palms facing the sky. Since you have been listening to this lecture for some time, try to relax the neck region. You can bend your head forward and backward. Turn right and left as much as you can. You can rotate your shoulders, just a couple of rotations, and maybe slightly push your shoulders back so that your chest is erect and there is no slouching. Widen your body. Stretch the spine a little bit upwards. The body is erect when the base of the spine and the back of the head are aligned. Do not strain your body. Do not bother it in any way. It is supposed to be your support. Slowly, let us shift our attention. We can now close our eyes. The breathing is the rope with which we go inside our being. It is the bridge between our outer being, surface consciousness, and our inner being. Slowly become aware of your natural flow of breath. Follow your breath as it enters you. Go inside. As far as possible, follow its flow. Entering the nose, entering the nasal passage, going down. Movement of your lungs, movement of your stomach. Now slowly increase and deepen your breath. Let your stomach be full. Exhale. Inhale more deeply. The stomach is full, then the lungs are also full. Fully to compress your lungs and compress your stomach. No stress or pressure or thrust anywhere. It should be a spontaneous, smooth, slightly elongated process. Inhalation duration can remain as short as you wish to keep it, but an exhalation can be much longer, as long as you can do it. Now intersperse your inhalation by holding the breath comfortably for a few seconds. Lock your throat area. Your abdomen is full, your lungs are full, the breath is right up to the throat. Then you can lock the throat area for a few seconds. Hold it as long as you are comfortable, but don't let your mind wander. Keep your awareness of the body intact and then exhale when you are comfortable. Again, when you exhale, exhale fully, gently, no thrust. After you exhale fully, when your stomach and your lungs have collapsed, hold your breath as long as you're comfortable. Don't choke for breath, but also keep your awareness fully, the entire body you're aware, from the top of the head to your legs, to your feet. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Do it at your own pace. Exhale, hold. When you exhale, exhale fully, stomach empty, lungs empty, throat empty. Awareness of the entire body, specifically awareness at the top of your head, maybe a couple of inches above. Observe your fingertips also. See if there are any sensations at the top of the head or at the fingertips. Remain still. Don't worry about external noises. They come, they go. That is the nature of life. We remain still. Mind still, emotions still, body still. We can't control what happens to us or around us, but we can remain still and observe. This is what we need to learn, not only at the body and today's noises, but in our life. In this stillness, let us invoke the Mother's presence. Continue the inhalation and exhalation cycle for the last time. After the completion of the cycle, revert to your normal breathing and remain in silence for 2-3 minutes. It is natural that the mind flows with thoughts. Observe carefully when you think of your entire being from the top of the head to your feet. Where do the thoughts occur? Which region of your entire being is often lost in thoughts? Observe that region, that portion, and mark that portion. This is approximately the portion where my thoughts occur. Try it again. We do another minute or two of silence. Try to be silent, but when you go into thoughts, observe the region of this body where you end up getting lost in thoughts. Take a deep breath. Most of you would notice that this region of thoughts is somewhere between the middle of the head to the top of the head. This is where our consciousness is most of the day because that is where it is entangled in thoughts. So what we call our consciousness remains in this part of the body most of the day. And it is entangled with this river of thoughts. That is our consciousness. Our consciousness flows in the thoughts most of the day. Now, let us take a deep breath again and repeat the breathing cycle of inhale hold, exhale, hold, and try to become aware of your entire body in the process and repeat a couple of cycles of this. In your holding period, observe complete silence in the entire body and also observe the silence in the room that surrounds you. Particularly in the holding period, it becomes very evident. There is complete stillness inside and outside. Be aware of it. Hold that awareness. धारण कीजिए उस awareness को. Hold it still. Entire body and the room. Concentrate in your heart region while you do this holding process. And resume your normal breathing. Retain the sense of awareness. Do not lose it. The awareness of your own being, the awareness of your own inner being, the awareness of your body, and the stillness around you, and the awareness of the entire room. This is your poise of awareness. Hold on to that awareness even as we come out of meditation. Slowly scan your being from the top of the head to your toes. Feel any sensations. Note any sensations you may feel in any part of the body. The top of the head, maybe the forehead region, maybe the throat region, maybe the heart region, maybe the fingertips, maybe elsewhere in the body. Any energy patterns, any tingling sensations, any slight deepening. Be aware of it as you scan. Slowly, gently move your fingertips. Close your fist and open your fist. Take a deep breath as we come to the surface consciousness. Retain the sense of stillness and awareness. Your toes, maybe your ankles, lift up your ankle and place it down. You can lift up your toes and let them touch the ground again. Maybe you can move your neck a little bit, bend it forward slowly, the sideways. Readjust your posture. You can touch your back if you like now. Half open your eyes. Adjust to the ambient light. You can come back to your outer consciousness. If you wish, you can rub your palms and touch your face. Some of you may be in the habit of doing so. Slowly, you can readjust to the bodily sensations. Now you can turn on the lights, turn on the cameras. We can have a little interaction if you still have the time and have the inclination.
Thank you so much, Srinivas Garu. Such a wonderful, wonderful session and meditation. I That was so great. I don't have words to describe. Meditations are always so great. I think there is a question in the chat.
Yes. Would you like to read it out?
Yeah, how do we know that we are under the influence of the psychic being? At least sometimes. So I think,
Yes.
yeah.
I will give a brief answer now, and then we will get into more detail in the next chapter, because the title of the next chapter is Action and Influence of the Psychic Being. Broadly, all of us are guided in our life by the psychic being to varying degrees. In fact, it is said that all important elements of our life are arranged by the psychic being, known or unknown to us. We are guided by it, even though it is not on the surface yet. Rest assured, it is, if we are all here with some inclination towards spiritual growth, it is the psychic being that has brought us here. One of the important characteristics of the psychic being is spiritual aspiration. So that itself is guiding us to be here, to read, to participate, to make these spiritual journeys. Further, we will take it up in more detail. The bottom line is, as we discussed today, as our mind becomes still, as our emotions become still, we receive more and more of the psychic guidance, and that should be our endeavor. There was also another question that I received on WhatsApp before the class today. I'll just mention that and kind of try to share it, because it is an opportunity for others also to kind of go over it. Develops a sensitive feeling for what is good, beautiful, fine, pure, and noble. If I understand it correctly, it includes people we may not like, or also, are we going to be, do we recognize the good and pure in them? A broader answer and then some specifics. As we come to spiritual life, the mother tells us that our circumstances are tailor-made to our spiritual evolution. They are specifically given to us in this life for maximum spiritual evolution. So that is something we have to be assured of. While going through that journey, naturally, there will be likes and dislikes, people whom we are unable to get along with. Sometimes it can be a colleague at work. Sometimes it can even be a relative that we are staying with. And sometimes it could even be our spouse, where there is a lack of synchronization or alignment or outlook towards life, or even some basic misalignment of ethical and moral issues. So it can be of varying degrees of impact on us. Broadly, the psychic being sees this as an opportunity for growth once it comes into this path. So we have to learn to withhold our surface reactions and try to take a deeper look at these things. When there are interactions, there are practical ways and means to handle them also. Sometimes there is a silent invocation inside to help and to overcome the specific interaction that is difficult. Sometimes one invokes a screen of white light between ourselves and the other person, mother's light, so that we are able to kind of react from a higher consciousness perspective. And also, when we have unpleasant interactions, often it is ego to ego, and we are invoking a higher light to come and dissolve some of these egoistic elements, so that the outcome is the best for everyone concerned. Talking behind people's back, complaining about them behind them. These are some of the things we try to eschew when we take up a psychic approach towards it, unless it is a part of resolving the issue, where we share with somebody to ask guidance and things like that. And where, when there is a strong negativity, perhaps upeksha, one of the sutras that is given by Patanjali, We kind of say forbearance with some element of indifference. We bear what we need to bear, yet we pray. And it works. There is a higher guidance. Once we pray and invoke a higher force, the resolution actually transcends the mental calculations. We may think X, Y, Z are the answers to our problem, but you may have a tangential response sent by the divine force, which is completely outside of your calculations. So invoking the higher force and bringing them in helps us. Yet we maintain that poise wherever possible, that psychic poise. It's not easy, but we try. We keep trying. So there are some more questions I'm seeing here. There is a sensation of stillness, sensations in the fingers. Yes, there are 7 chakras that we all know, but the mother and Sri Aurobindo have pointed out that there are chakras even above and below that go beyond what we know. There are chakras also, small chakras at the fingertips and other areas. These are all sensitive areas to interchange of energy. And when we move into the inner being and we grow deeper, we develop capacity to understand what is going on. Even though in meditation you may feel the tingling, the truth is energy is going out and coming here in many of these places. Heaviness in the mind has reduced and the calmness has settled. Very good. May I know the difference between sitting in a place in a sattvic way or a tamasic way? Doing our work without wanting to move around. Is it laziness or stillness? In the tamasic way, normally there is a lethargy that comes in. There is a slouching that comes in. There is perhaps a little bit of torpor, sleepiness. When we are reading, sometimes we fall asleep and kind of sing. These are things. But our approach would be to have that conscious awareness of what is going on in and around us. There is perhaps, in some people's case, an inner japa that is going on. There is, in some people's case, perhaps even a witness attitude where one is seeing oneself sit and work while one is working. Sakshi bhava. It can almost be physical sometimes. So these are ways that we can become aware. But yes, it's a gradual build up. It does not happen initially overnight. Like I said, building up a capacity to sit for 3 hours may not come to all of us. We may want to develop it 30 minutes, 50 minutes, 1 hour. And I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it. There is also the ergonomic aspect of sitting for too long and the problems it causes. But I'm talking of the capacity to do so and building up that capacity. Another comment, because I exercise daily by swimming for 1.5, 1 hour, 15 minutes, and also brisk walking, I find my vital fast. How do I slow it down without cutting on the exercise? Oh, wow. Today I participated in a marathon. Nitinji, I must congratulate you. You are obviously someone who is working on the physical in a very wonderful way. I wish we draw inspiration from you that at your age you are participating in a 10 km run. So all wonderful things to hear. The key to finding out the status of the vital is there an inherent restlessness? Is there a certain incapacity to hold still? If one sits, is one moving body parts, whether it is moving of the leg, constantly, some people shake their leg. Does one have the capacity? All one needs to do is withdraw for 15 minutes and see how the being is. If one doesn't have the capacity, one can slowly build it up. It can even be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Observing the mind, observing the vital. Another thing that ties what Nitinji is saying with the earlier question about reaction to people we don't like, we may have reactions. We may have same reactions. But often what happens when one turns inside is the ferocity of reaction and the duration of reaction gradually comes down. So let us say somebody is prone to get angry 3 times a month or maybe 6 times a month. Then it comes down from 6, it may come down to 3, from 3 it may come down to 1. And also the intensity and the duration to which it affects our being, it can reduce. These are normally things that happen when one opens up to the spiritual dimensions and one does sadhana. And what I have just said, can we control anger differently while being in the psychic being? First step is we turn inward, we move towards the inner being. And in that inner being, the restlessness is less, there is a greater calmness. What is required for anger to come down is a general vibration of peace in our being on a constant basis. Breath helps in calming the being down, and deepening that calm allows us to generate peace, and that peace absorbs the anger. We pray to the psychic being, and not necessarily our awareness of psychic being should increase. We pray to the mother, or we pray to the deities that we are used to. We can deepen that. We can try to go towards the psychic being. There will come a time when the psychic being, we are able to reach out and seek the guidance of psychic being in our day-to-day life. That psychic contact has to be established. Once that is established, we can get the guidance from the psychic being. In fact, there is a sadhaka of Sri Vidya Upasana who used to see the Divine Mother as a little girl in and around him. And she used to interact with him constantly. There comes a point in his sadhana where she says, well, you won't see me around anymore much. He's a little surprised. Then how do I contact you for guidance? I am inside of you. Go inside. When you're asking the question, it is you. When you receive the answer, it is me. So that is our destination eventually. We need to go there. How to become, Aparnaji has written, how do I know if I'm making progress or not? I've been reading Sri Aurobindo's and Mother's books since childhood. How to become aware of the psychic being. You are a blessed soul, Aparnaji, if you have been someone who has been exposed to the literature of Mother and Sri Aurobindo since your childhood. The best guide for our own progress is ourselves. And there is an interesting observation that sadhana is not a goal-oriented journey. It is a process-oriented journey. Each of us cannot define when we will arrive at self-realization. Each of us cannot decide when we are going to have the realization of the, over mental being or higher mental being. What we can, however, do is to put our all into the sadhana, the practices. Am I doing exercises on the physical side to make my physical more supple on a regular basis? Am I doing a little bit of meditation? If you are used to pranayama or you have learned pranayama, are you doing pranayama? Are you doing a little bit of reading every day? Reading is a very powerful tool in the path of sadhana of integral yoga. Reading puts us directly in touch with the consciousness of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Every day, morning and evening, if possible, reading at least a little bit, half an hour. Are we doing our meditations? In spite of everything else, though people come and quote me, Mother has said there is no need to meditate and all of that. I agree with you. I personally think I'm not there yet. And I personally believe that meditation adds a lot of value to a lot of people out there. As we do all of this, turning our general nature inward, becoming introverted, is one of the very, very important steps towards psychic being. Becoming introverted or developing the Sakshi Bhava, that is a necessary step. As we do all this, things will fall away from us. They say sadhana brings us to a point where the outer nature falls away like a ripened fruit. We don't make an effort to grab it. Psychic being will unfold in its own time, but let us keep doing the sadhana. Anil Groverji was asking a question, turning points in one's own sadhana, contact with psychic being. I'm still in the journey. Things are still being worked out. The outer nature is still being cleaned. I'm only focusing on what I can do, which is, am I doing my reading? Am I spending time in meditation? Am I trying to observe my nature and see my reactions and hold my reactions? Still continuing through all those basics. When the psychic being will open, how it will change, we will see. So those are the questions we had. I think we have covered everything. So let us continue the meditations. Let us continue the readings. Those of you who have read the first chapter once, try to read it again. Try to kindly stay open to the mother, invoke her grace, observe the reactions. And as we go forward, for the next 2-3 days, we have made it a practice to keep the group open so that we can take questions. So Kameshwari will be opening the group, and then we will take it forward.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
sir. Thanks a lot for taking up all the questions and the meditation and the class. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Namaste.
Jai Gurudev.